A bunch of guys have asked me what they should do if they work the night shift, especially in terms of their circadian rhythm, their sleep, when they should eat their meals, and like training around that schedule. I won't go into detail about the health risks of working the night shift, but it's pretty bad. A few of them are increased risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity and metabolic disease, neurocognitive impairment, anxiety and depression and other mental health issues, prostate cancer, and sexual dysfunction. It's really pretty bad. We are not designed to be up at night and sleeping during the day. It's a tough situation, of course, but there are things that you can do to make it more manageable. This is something that doctors have to deal with, of course, and luckily there are some doctors on social media who are interested in this stuff and they've shared like what they found and what they think you should be doing. So people like Roger Sehilt, I'm probably saying that wrong, Coffee Black MD and Aboud Bakri on Twitter, and then a couple of my commenters are also in this situation, guys who work in like warehouses overnight. These guys have also kindly shared their advice, so I'll be taking that into consideration as well. First of all, the single most important recommendation I can make is to find a daytime job. The night shift is really very bad for your health. Maybe you feel like you don't have a choice and you're kind of stuck in your current night shift job, but it really is worth it to get a daytime job, even if it's lower pay. Your health is going to suffer as a consequence of doing night shifts, and all you can really try to do in this situation is try to mitigate that to some extent, but you can't mitigate it entirely. Like, you will be damaging yourself by working nights. Another thing is, if you can, don't do more than like 3 night shifts in a row. So like the fewer night shifts you can do, the better, and try to keep the night shifts themselves below 9 hours in duration if that's possible. And lastly, if you have rotating shifts, try to make them rotate clockwise, so from day to evening to night rather than night to evening to day. This is just much easier for your circadian rhythm to adjust to. Now, outside of controlling your actual working schedule, probably the most important thing you can control is your light environment. Obviously, in a normal routine, we would be awake during the day when it's bright outside and we would be sleeping at night, but that is pretty much reversed in night shift workers. So you have to be really intentional about your light environment. Before your night shift starts, watch the sunset if possible. This will be like your sunrise. The red and infrared wavelengths in the sunset do good things for your mitochondria and your circadian rhythm as a whole. That's going to offset some of the damage that you'll be experiencing with your disrupted circadian rhythm. So after you have watched the sunset, during your night shift, when it's dark outside, use a bright blue and rich light while you're at work. You want to try and mimic sunlight as much as possible. The sun itself is extremely bright, like over 100,000 lux outside, and you can't recreate that with artificial lighting, but you just have to do your best. If you're in a warehouse, there might be really bright ceiling lights anyway. If you're in an office or something, then you can get things like a 10,000 lux seasonal affective disorder light. Other names for this kind of thing are like sunlight therapy lamp or daylight lamp, stuff like that. So this light should be bright, it should have plenty of blue light in it like sunlight does. The best case scenario would be to get a light that mimics the sun, that has a similar spectrum to the sun, like a full spectrum circadian friendly light. I have a couple of these, but they're not really bright enough for this purpose, right? I have to get quite close to them, basically put my eyes really close to them in order to reach 10,000 lux, which isn't convenient. But there are plenty of brands that sell these daylight lamps that are like medically approved for seasonal affective disorder, so they will work decently well. I don't think most of them are full spectrum. Unfortunately, they have like a big spike in the blue wavelength, but they will work reasonably well. I don't really like telling you all this stuff because we know that artificial light at night is bad for us, but achieving a somewhat stable circadian rhythm is better than having an inconsistent, chaotic schedule. We're doing our best to mimic the normal pattern of light throughout the day. Towards the end of your shift, and when you're going home in the morning, that's basically like your evening. So you want to start blocking blue light and making your environment darker. So at least in the last hour before the end of your shift, if you can, put on some blue light blocking glasses and keep them on the rest of the morning until you go to bed. Like, dim all of the lights as much as you can, put a blue light filter on your phone. By the end of your shift, the sun is probably rising or up already, and at that time before you're going to sleep, you don't want that sunlight coming into your eyes and suppressing your melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that helps you to sleep, and it is released during darkness, so we need darkness as much as possible. You want to let melatonin build up as much as you can by surrounding yourself in darkness in the hours before you sleep, and the darker the better. I recommend sleeping as soon as possible after your shift. For many people that will be like 5 or 6 or 7 a.m. the shift ends, and then within a couple of hours after that you should be going to sleep. So towards the end of your shift and after you finish your shift, start blocking blue light and making your environment dark. Wear blue light blocking glasses or sunglasses if it's daylight outside. Obviously, you have to be safe if you're driving home. Don't wear sunglasses or things that are going to kind of obscure your vision and make it harder to see, because that's dangerous. Please don't do that. When you get home, definitely make sure the environment is as dark as possible, especially in the last 1 or 2 hours before bed. Make your environment as much like nighttime as you can. So blackout blinds, really dim lights, if any at all. So maybe some candles. Wear your blue light blocking glasses. Avoid using your phone if possible, and put your phone onto night mode where it blocks all of the blue light on the screen. So your phone screen should be basically red or very dark orange. This environment is really important. You're trying to simulate nighttime. Obviously, this is going to be much harder if you have a family, but you just got to do what you can. Set rules that, daddy doesn't get disturbed before he goes to bed, or at least there are no bright lights in the room that you're in. And then when you're going to sleep, make sure the room is pitch black, totally dark, like no light from the window or the hallway or any sources of light anywhere in the room, like an alarm clock. You've got to be very strict about this. Even things like an alarm clock, like I said, even that is enough to suppress melatonin and mess up your sleep. I recommend wearing an eye mask for an extra layer of darkness. Set the room to a nice cool temperature for sleeping, like 60 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 16 to 19 degrees Celsius. Use a fan or air conditioning if you have to. Keep the room silent. Wear earplugs. Maybe use white noise or a fan to block out sounds. Basically set up your whole sleeping environment to make it as easy as possible for you to sleep, because just by nature of trying to sleep during the day, it's going to be harder by default. So you have to do as much as you can to make it easier for yourself. Even people who work normal working hours like 9 to 5, they should be doing this in their sleep environment anyway. But for you night workers, it is especially important. Moving on from the light environment, we can talk about food and supplements. I know it's going to be very tempting, but try not to have caffeine within about 6 to 8 hours of bedtime. You should find that as you get into your routine and your sleep gets better, you'll have more energy and less need for caffeine. If you're going to sleep at like 8 or 9 a.m., you shouldn't really have caffeine beyond like 2 a.m. or so, and ideally stop having caffeine even earlier than that. Don't eat too close to bedtime, because that can mess up your sleep. You just don't want something that's going to keep you awake, like digesting food, and especially avoid junk food and highly processed sugary stuff before bed. Your meal times are pretty important, so you want to try and eat at the same times every day. Your main meal will probably be after you wake up, around dinner time, like 5 to 7 p.m. Ideally, you have that meal during daylight hours, and then maybe another smaller meal before the start of your shift, ideally again while it is still light outside, and then your last meal towards the end of the shift, about sunrise or just after your shift. So I'll go back to eating during daylight hours. This is very important. Daytime is when our body is most primed for eating, especially for processing glucose. Eating at night is not good for you at all. Even if you're used to your night shift routine where your night is kind of like your daytime, our body doesn't seem to care about that. It knows that at nighttime it is not meant to be eating, and you get all sorts of health problems and metabolic problems in night workers, specifically because they are eating at night and under artificial light. So this is one of the most important interventions you can do. Try to only eat during daytime hours. This is basically a form of intermittent fasting. It'll be really hard. You will be hungry, especially at first when you're not used to it, but for your metabolic health, it is worth it. Have most of your food like after you wake up and before your shift, and then a small meal after your shift before bed. If you are going to eat during the shift, make it healthy food, ideally low glycemic index foods. I'll put some of those on the screen, because at night we don't handle glucose as well, so you don't want to have really sugary foods at night. And during your shift, don't make it an enormous meal. It'll be much easier if you meal prep your foods to make this easier for yourself and less tempting to go to like a 24-hour fast food restaurant at 2 a.m, something like that. If you are going to eat during the shift and even outside of the shift, it's a good idea to go for a walk after each meal, or at least do some kind of physical activity like push-ups or squats. This helps you with insulin sensitivity, so to draw the glucose out of your blood into the muscles and the other tissues of your body. At night, your insulin sensitivity is impaired, so you need as much help as you can get. And of course, throughout the shift and throughout the day, stay hydrated. There are a couple supplements you can take to help you sleep, like magnesium glycinate 30 to 60 minutes before bed. I recommend that for most people, especially night shift workers. Like, you need as much help as you can get getting to sleep. Melatonin can be useful in this scenario. I normally wouldn't recommend it for like normal situations, but working the night shift is a difficult spot to be in, and if you have exhausted a lot of your other options, this is something that can definitely help. Something like 0.5 milligram to 3 milligrams 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. Start with a very low dose, and hopefully that will help you, and then only increase it if you really need to. And there are some other sleep aids like valerian root, chamomile, lemon balm, and so on. one that can help you relax and sleep. And then another few supplements just for general health. I have to give credit to Greg Mushin on Twitter for suggesting these for night shift workers. Vitamin D, because you will be sleeping during the middle of the day, which is the only time that you can make vitamin D from sunlight. So you are going to be deficient in vitamin D if you're a night shift worker and you're not supplementing, because you can't get vitamin D like at the hours that you're awake. Take vitamin D after you wake up, at least like 1000 IU, and up to 5000 IU is probably better. Take vitamin K2 with vitamin D to make sure that calcium gets drawn into the bones rather than getting stuck in the arteries and causing artery calcification. We know that creatine can somewhat protect against the brain effects of poor sleep. You might even want to up the dose to something like 10 to 20 grams on the days that you work night shifts. Not all in one go, of course, but spread out across the day, because a massive dose can upset your stomach. Some antioxidants like vitamin E and vitamin C are useful because your shift work will be causing increased oxidative stress, and then B vitamins will also help. Hopefully you're getting enough of these just from your diet if you're eating plenty of animal foods. You can have a look at my ultimate nutrition guide to see how to get all of these nutrients I have discussed from food. Exercising is one of the best things that you can do as a night shift worker to mitigate the health risks of shift work. The best time to work out for most people is before your night shift starts. You'll probably struggle to work out after your night shift when you're tired and you just want to sleep. So I think the best time is probably just after you wake up. So have a small snack before your workout to give you some energy, and then work out pretty soon after waking up. It'll probably have to be quite a short workout, like an hour or less. Maybe you have more time than that, in which case that's good. But after your workout, you want to have dinner, ideally before the sun sets. Like I said earlier, eating during the daytime is what we're designed for, not during darkness. This first big meal of the day after your workout, that will be like your main meal where you get most of your calories and most of your nutrients. The other way you could do it is wake up, then eat your big dinner, and then work out, and then have like a smaller meal after your workout before your shift. You'll probably have to try both and see which you like better. I think the first option is going to be better, personally. In terms of the exercise you should do, just basic resistance training and cardio, like 3 days of lifting, 3 days of cardio, and 1 rest day per week. If you're watching my channel, there's a good chance you already have your like personal workout routine sorted. Just as long as you're doing some exercise, staying healthy, getting stronger, that will be good. One guy who commented on a recent post of mine said that he works the night shift and yet he broke 2 state powerlifting records while doing that. So clearly you can still perform well physically even while you're working the night shift. So that should be pretty reassuring. It's just going to be harder for you than for someone with a normal working hours. Other than the main workout of the day, you should keep moving throughout your night shift. Your night shift is the active part of your day, so you should be getting some physical activity and walking around, doing some push-ups, just moving around a bit, not just sitting there for hours without moving. Let me go through an example of a day where you're working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So you wake up after about 7 or 8 hours of sleep at hopefully about 3, 4, 5 p.m. or about 6 or 7 hours before your shift starts. Pretty much immediately after you wake up, get outside for some sun. Then have a snack, hydrate yourself, and then work out for like an hour or so shortly after waking up. After your workout, have a big dinner, the main meal of the day. Hopefully that is before sunset, and you should go outside and watch the sunset if you can. And then the night shift starts, let's say at 11 p.m. and it ends at 7 a.m. During the night shift itself, try not to eat. Stay hydrated, keep moving, get some occasional movement. Stop drinking caffeine at least 6 to 8 hours before you want to go to sleep. So ideally just have caffeine like at the start of your shift. Optionally, you can have a nap in your shift, ideally somewhere in the first half of the shift. So this can help, but you will probably be groggy when you wake up. So that's not great if you need to be alert and sharp. So do keep that in mind. As you approach the end of the shift, certainly in the last hour or so, which will probably be 5, 6, 7 a.m. or so, start blocking blue light and making your environment darker to get you ready for sleep. So you'll have maybe 3 hours of blocking blue light and making your environment dark before you go to bed. Now the last meal before bed is a bit tricky in my opinion. Ideally you wouldn't eat anything, but obviously by now you're going to be pretty hungry and that can make it hard to sleep. I was trying to decide between 2 options, which are watching the sunrise and eating while the sun is up. Then after you've eaten, start blocking blue light and making your environment dark, because we know that daytime eating is better than nighttime eating. This would mean though that you don't start blocking blue light until after you have eaten. So that's a bit closer to bedtime. You have less time in darkness, which will mean less time for melatonin to rise and help you sleep. Maybe this could work if sunrise was very early, like if you're in a pretty polar country and it's summer, so sunrise is like 4 or 5 a.m. The other option is you start blocking blue light and being in darkness, and and you just eat during this period without worrying about the sunrise, without really exposing yourself to sunlight, because this is the start of your like dark period. This will mean that your melatonin is able to rise more and your sleep will probably be better, but you will be eating during the dark period of the day, which isn't great, but honestly I think this is probably the better option. You will at least be eating during daytime hours, even if it's dark. Like I said earlier, it seems to be that the time of day itself is important, not just the light signals you're getting. And since we're preparing for sleep, I think it's more important to block blue light and ensure darkness. If you're watching the sunrise and you're getting morning light, that will keep you awake, which is counterproductive. It's going to suppress melatonin and make it harder for you to sleep, and sleep is just so important for someone who's working the night shift. So in short, block blue light, eat your small meal, and then go to bed. If you do decide to eat anything, it should be small and it should be just enough to allow you to sleep without being starving. It should have some protein, some pretty low GI carbs, not a whole lot of fat, and not a lot of fiber to make it easy to digest so you're not digesting food while you're trying to sleep. Something like a bowl of Greek yogurt and some berries, or a protein shake and a banana. And then finish eating at least 45 to 60 minutes before bed, and then go to sleep 8 or 9 a.m. or so, or like 2 or 3 hours after the end of your shift. During those 2 or 3 hours, you commute home, you eat, and then you relax as much as you can in your dark, relaxing, sleep optimized environment. Of course, the exact timings that I've just described is going to differ based on your night schedule, but hopefully that gave you a decent picture of what the schedule could look like. A couple extra things. On your off days, it seems to be better to not fully switch to a normal daytime schedule. So you want to at least somewhat maintain your nighttime schedule. So that means getting at least a long nap during your normal sleeping times in the middle of the day, or even a bit of a longer sleep in the middle of the day. And also try to keep your normal exercise schedule. So you're probably working out in the evening, like 6 p.m. or so, before you would normally do your shift and before you would normally have dinner. There's an app I found that might be helpful. It's called Time Shifter, specifically for shift workers. It seems to be fairly well regarded, so that might be worth a try. I definitely recommend keeping on top of your healthcare checks like blood work and so on. This will mean that you can directly see any problems that you need to address. Do this at least once a year. Night shift can be very hard on your mental health and your social life, so do your best to socialize and hang out with family and friends, like be intentional about that, and manage your stress. I have a video about cortisol that will help you with managing stress. I was happy to see that most of the commenters who discussed what they were doing to help them with working the night shift pretty much aligns with all of this advice that I have just laid out for you, which is like the medically supported, like this is a generally supported advice for working the night shift. That is pretty much everything I have for you. I really hope this helps you guys who are working night shifts. If you want some help really dialing in this routine for yourself, you can work with me one-on-one through my coaching. And on top of that, you'll also get a workout program specifically for you, diet plan, specifically tailored to you. And you'll basically have access to 100% of my knowledge. Like my videos, I haven't even made videos on like 20% of the stuff that I've got notes on. So if you want access to all of that, I will link that below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.